Um, uh, I'm gonna, I'm gonna. I guess I don't want this streamed. It's not everybody's business. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I know how I'm gonna do it. else we want to say or any plans we want to make? We can. Rocky led us into that thing last year where we can do that without incurring tax penalties. We can just transfer it over to their account. So if anybody wanted to give to them, let me know tonight and we'll work it out. I just meant like Barry mentioned, them having to pay for hotel rooms for even further. That's all. Just like that. Okay. Well, let's go to 1 Kings 18. What? Yes. They were all kind of close-ish in that same area. It's a small town on the other side of Houston called Cold Spring. Close to Livingston. I don't know, that doesn't, people like me, everything down there is Houston. Okay, so I'm not really the source. I know the name of the town, but the big thicket, Barry says. That probably sounds more fun than it is. Yeah? Okay, well, we looked at Elijah last week. We met Elijah the Tishbite. And he pronounced, and this is sort of a continuation of last week's story, but it's just very long. Elijah begins his career as a prophet. He shows up to the evil king. What's his name? Ahab. And he tells Ahab what? No rain. Cutting you off. There won't be rain until I say so. Okay? And then what we talked about last week was how Elijah himself survived the drought. Okay? He went to the brook, and the brook dried up. And then he was led to the widow. But what happened shocking with the widow? Her son died, right? And so things just keep going. Well, today is part of that story, but it's 3 years later, okay? We are still dealing with a drought of 3 years. And so really the implication is not a drop of rain or dew until Elijah says so. So we have been in a hard rain period, but we haven't been in a 3-year not a drop period. Can you imagine what would happen to the land? 3 years, not a drop, right? Yeah, before you could dig a water well. I mean, I don't know how many of us would still be here, right? I mean, I know that may be dramatic, but it would make such a high impact on infrastructure quickly that many of us would just have to relocate. You know what I mean? This is the situation with which we open chapter 18. I'm not going to read 1 through 15. We're going to do plenty of reading tonight, but I do want to just kind of point out a couple things to you. And so look at this first one. After a long time, in the 3rd year, the word of the Lord came to Elijah. Go and present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the land. And so Elijah went to present himself on the land. There's this amazing verse where there is a man of God inside Ahab's inner circle. Okay, his name is Obadiah, and he has been a secret agent of Yahweh. Obadiah has done many good things. Obadiah has been gathering up prophets of Yahweh and hiding them in caves. And Obadiah has been a voice of reason. Ahab looked at Obadiah one day and said, hey man, I want you, sending you on a mission. Go out to the country, see if you can find some grass somewhere so we could save some of the horses. I mean, this is how low down we are, is maybe we could just move our horses to some grass if you find it. And while he's out looking for grass, Elijah appears to him. He just says, hey. And Obadiah says, is that really you, Elijah? And Elijah says, I'm here and I want to see Ahab. Go tell Ahab I'm here. And Obadiah says, no way, man. Because you'll disappear and then I'll get killed. But after the big promising and all this stuff, Elijah promises and Ahab comes out to meet him. And that's where we're going to pick up in verse 16. Here we go. We're going to read 16 through 24. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. When he saw Elijah, he said to him, is that you, you troubler of Israel? I have not made trouble for Israel, Elijah replied, but you and your father's family have. You've abandoned the Lord's commands and followed the Baals. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. So Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, how long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. But the people said nothing. Then Elijah said to him, I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves, and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the fire, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord, and the God who answers by fire, he is God. And all the people said, what you say is good. And that's where we're going to stop. Okay, let's dig into this. Elijah appears. How does Ahab greet him? It's a very pointed statement. You troubler of Israel. Now, let's just think about it a second. From Ahab's perspective, how is Elijah a troubler? He's the one that said there would be rain. Wouldn't be rain. Right, sorry. He is stirring up. I made an interesting list after research. You're the one stirring unrest by talking about what Yahweh wants, giving the people doubts. And you're the one angering Baal and causing the drought. That's what they would think at this point. You made Baal mad with your dumb antics. You're the troublemaker. Ahab would say, I have the nation at peace. I made an alliance with Phoenicia by marrying Jezebel that keeps us safe. I've got the nation worshiping the one Baal. He thinks I'm the one making peace. You're the one making trouble, right? And Ahab is missing the point. He thinks that life is about this stuff. But success is not just worldly progress. It's godly conduct, caring for the less fortunate, and remaining holy and set apart for Yahweh only. So who's the real troublemaker? The one who has the nation headed into the right direction, a safe, stable, sensible direction, or the one who is calling for God's heart to be put on in the center again? The one who is calling for a return to Yahweh. And this is where we are. So he says, you're the troubler. I haven't made trouble, but you and your father's family have. And he says it clearly in verse 18, you have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals. Okay. And we talked a little bit last time. Elijah means, Yahweh is God. And Baal means kind of like the master. It has the all in it. In fact, there's some translations that translate Baal as the master. Just an interesting kind of thing there. So we have these two deities. And so in verse 19, Elijah proposes a contest. What does he propose in verse 19? Oh, what? A meat contest. I never thought about that. A fire contest? And yes, and he begins with something interesting. He begins by asking what? All the people, right? Because this contest is not about just winning the contest. This contest is about winning hearts, right? Elijah, at the end of the day, he doesn't want to just beat the prophets of Baal. He wants the Israelite people to see what? That Yahweh is God. If Elijah were to win the contest in private, it would not change the world. To change the world, he needs the people to see. And so the first thing he says is, now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel. And you bring your 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah. I mean, a whole bunch, 850 prophets. You bring them. They can be on one side, and I'll be at the other. What accusation does he have for the prophets, by the way? They do what? They eat at Jezebel's table. That sounds like a diner. That I don't recommend stopping at, okay? And so this is how it is. I've always found Asherah fascinating. I mean, just this dorky stuff, it won't change your life. But Asherah is a female deity of that region that they tried to set up with about every god. Even at some points, Israelites were guilty of saying that Asherah must be Yahweh's wife. They always wanted their God to have a wife. I mean, I remember that feeling. Everybody thinking you need a wife. But Asherah appears in multiple religions, and she's always this partner to the main deity. Okay, so in this case, she's apparently taken up with Baal, and she has her own prophets for a while. So those are those two things. Now get them all together. Meet me on Mount Carmel. And there's no explanation yet of what's going to happen. We just need to get to Mount Carmel. Now Elijah comes before the people. We have the even before, because if you're looking at your Bible, and go look at verse 20 with me in your eyes. He doesn't start explaining the contest till verse 22, but in verse 20, who's he addressing? We got to keep going there. The verse 21, I should say, that paragraph. In verse 21, who's he addressing? The people. Elijah's interest, again, is not just winning the contest, it's the people. And so in verse 21, he says all this has a purpose. Even before he's given the rules of the contest, he wants the people to be thinking, right? Be using your critical thinking noggin. And in verse 21, what does he want from them? Choose somebody. Figure out who God is and choose him, right? He asks him, how long will you waver between two opinions? Someone could ask us that most mornings, and it'd probably be a pretty good question to start the day with. What is it that you're going to be today, right? Think about who you want to be. As humans, we're often wavering between seeing the world through God's eyes and seeing the world through man's eyes. He says, if Yahweh is God, then let's go. Let's start moving towards him. Now, I don't struggle with Baal, but I struggle with other things, right? Huh? Me? Yeah, all right. That's probably the clearest way we could say that. If Yahweh is God, then serve him. And if you're God, well, you're doing a good job already. Just keep after it. You know what I mean? If Yahweh is God, then serve him. If money is God, then serve him. You know, we can have this question. And Elijah wants, even before we begin the contest, for them to know this is about the people that belong to God making a decision about who they're going to be loyal to. Right? It's a good question. Yeah. 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 There's got to be a lot of mixed reactions in the crowd that day. But do yourself a favor, Elijah would say, and stop going back and forth between two things. Find what is real and serve it. Elijah is not afraid of the question, and we should never be. If Yahweh and his son Christ represent God, then I'm confident that if you earnestly search, he is all there is to find. Serve him and check it. Now, I want to go to what Nancy referenced. The people said nothing. That's the end of verse 21. Some of you guys, I think, have more literal translations. Anybody else got a different version of the people said nothing? Man, Crystal wins again. That's literally what the Hebrew says. And the only reason I'm pointing that out is because answering becomes a theme. Okay, that word answer keeps appearing throughout the rest of the passage. So at this point, the first group to not answer is the people. Nobody will answer. You guys know the story. You're well churched. Nobody will answer until Yahweh answers. The people don't answer. Baal doesn't answer. It keeps setting up this theme. No one has anything to say. Their speech is empty. So they just leave it empty. The other voices are quiet until Yahweh brings his voice. Okay? So, just setting you that up because I want you to be able to see those themes as we go. The Israelite people have been so confused by countering claims that they have been unable to decide. You know what? I'm proud of them. I don't think in 2023 we would have been so quiet. I think in 2023 everybody's got an answer. And we have a lot to say. But they are quiet. They would not answer Elijah because they could not answer Elijah. They just didn't know. Yahweh was the God of their fathers, but there was a natural appeal of the Baal religion that had confused them. They were the king. Jezebel promoted this. There is a practicality towards having a fertility god. And I know that sounds funny. That's a really weird conversation. But if a fertility type god like Yahweh, like Baal and the others that we see in that type, it's simple. If there's not enough rain, you didn't burn enough goats. Get out there and burn some goats, right? It's just transactional and it's simple, right? Baal doesn't want your heart. Baal wants you to do sacrifices. That's all he wants. He's a simple guy. And so there is an attraction to these kind of models that they have. Just a funny thing. So they were confused by the simplicity of Baal, even though they knew that Yahweh was their heritage. All right, so finally, verse 22, I believe. Yes, Elijah explains the contest, okay? He's not correct here. He doesn't know how many prophets Obadiah has held back for him, and he's about to complain to God, saying he's the only one, and God's going to tell him, no, you're not, man. I got this. But at this point, he thinks, I'm the only one of the Lord's prophets left. Baal has 450 prophets, and we're going to have us a contest. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves. Let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. And then how are we going to decide who wins? Which God sets it on fire? What'd you say?
Call on your God.
Call on your God. It's a question. He encourages them. And this is a very holistic way to think about it. And this is an interesting way to approach people that have distinct other beliefs than us. Why don't you call on your God? Why don't you cry out in whatever way you believe and find out, are they really there? Do your alternative belief systems actually hold you up? Does that make sense? Elijah has no fear because he does not believe deep in his heart that Baal will do anything. And so he is not afraid to watch them call out for Baal. And so he encourages them. You call on the name of your Elohim, and I will call on the name of the Lord, Yahweh, and I will call on my Yahweh. The Elohim who answers by fire, he is, and this is a big Elohim, he is the real Elohim. He's the real deity. This is an interesting thing. I used to say this in jail. I haven't done it in a while. I was always fascinated when I first moved here that there are a great number of mountains right here, right? But can you see them? And I found that a little heart-wrenching. If you just go a few more miles most days, you could see them, but you just can't see them here, right? And so, okay, I didn't know that. Huh, interesting. So, if someone were to, if I'd have moved, when I came here, if you'd have told me, hey, there's mountains, I mean, just over there, I might have had doubt in my heart. But you could tell me, hey, just drive that away. I have no anxiety about you going and looking because I know what you'll find. Does that make sense? It does not scare me at all for you to go searching for the mountains because I know what you'll find if you'll just go look, right? And in that way, we can approach people who are dealing with this searching. Go looking. Just go looking because I believe I know what you'll find, right? And you can take the anxiety out of that. So he says, you guys, you Baal guys, go looking. Call out to Baal. Keep going. Encourage. See if there's something real about it. Elijah knows there's nothing real about it. He's spoken to the Lord. But he encourages them, try it your way. Now, they do try it that way. Well, we haven't gotten that far. But notice, the people have something to say now. What do the people say? Because they like the idea of a contest. What is this contest going to do for them? Show them the truth. You would love that, right? I mean, do what, Crystal? Be clear cut, right? We would love to see that. Show us clearly by a demonstration which God we're supposed to follow. Oh, it'd be a gift. So the people have something to say. Man, we would love that. We're here for it. Go. All right, so let's look at this. Let's just read 25 through 29. Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one of the bulls and prepare it first, since there are so many of you. Call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire. They took the bull given them and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. Baal, answer us, they shouted. But there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. I'm still reading. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. Shout louder, he said. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. In fact, no one paid attention. Oh, what a day, right? Slow that down a little bit. For in the morning, what did they took a bull? What did they do to the bull? Cut in pieces, slaughtered it up, put it on the altar, and then they start praying. Okay? Yeah. All day long they prayed. And they danced. I think I gotta get the sequence right because it escalates. I don't want to rush it. They called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. Here we go. Baal, answer us, they shouted. I mean, I got to admit, I don't want to be put in a situation where I got to pray until God does X, right? Don't volunteer me for that. And if that's the trouble you've gotten yourself into, don't call me, okay? We don't want to have to try to squeeze God into doing something. If it's not God's idea, it's really nerve-wracking. So I don't know what I'd do, but here they are. They shout, Baal, answer us. There was no response. No one answered. We get that for the first time in 26. And they danced around the altar they had made. So they started dancing, which would wear me out even quicker. Now we're hollering, we're praying, and we're dancing. And at noon, what does Elijah start to do? To taunt them. This is a tough thing, man. I kind of hope Elijah knows what he's doing, right? He begins to taunt them. Maybe you need to try harder to get Baal going, right? There is the word that we call cult, we know as cult, which obviously has a distinct meaning. but it comes from the Latin cultivare deorum, which means to cultivate a god. And so when we see a cult, it means that they cultivated a god from somewhere. They made up a god. And this is such a clear picture. These guys are trying to cultivate a god. And in their mind, what do you got to do to cultivate a god? You got to holler. You got to pray. You got to dance. But it gets worse. But first, before we get there, let's just look at his taunts. They're so funny to me. Shout louder, right? What kind of God can't hear you? Needs you to shout louder. I mean, wow. I didn't what his hearing aided. This is distinct, and this is not a joke. This is hurtful, right? Surely he is a God. I mean, how could you be here if he wasn't? And then he gives him a few things. Perhaps he's deep in thought. Maybe he's busy, which we have a problem with this Hebrew word that we're just translating busy here. It is a euphemism for going to the bathroom. So we're not confident enough to translate it. Maybe he's deep in thought. Maybe he's in the bathroom. But it really, that's what yours says? Oh my gosh, your translation trips me out, man. It like nailed the answer thing, and then it uses this. Okay. Maybe he's in the bathroom. Maybe he's traveling. I mean, this is insulting. This is funny and silly. Maybe he's asleep and must be awakened, which is a little salt in the wound. I told you last week that every time the winter comes, they thought that Baal had what? Died, and his sister had killed him, and they switched to praying to his sister Anat until she would go grind up his bones and put them in the clouds, and he could fall back down to earth and fertilize things. So they had a belief that every year Baal died and resurrected again. And so it's a funny thing to think he's sleeping and he must be awakened. Maybe he's just dead again, It happens every year. So we got some good taunts. And they begin to cultivate even harder. After the taunts, what do? They shout louder, and then they do what? They cut themselves, right? This is that ancient belief that turns out not to be that far off, that the shedding of blood is connected to ritualistic things. It's Christ's shed blood that paves our way. And God himself says without the shedding of blood, there can be no remission of sins. And so there's this funny thing. So now we're dancing, we're shouting louder, and we've not cut ourselves until blood flowed, right? They're working hard to cultivate a God and to get his attention, right? Tough thing. Verse 29 takes us through the end of this section. They continued their frantic prophesying until the time for evening sacrifice. I don't know much about prophesying in that way, but it doesn't sound like it would be helpful if it was frantic. I would think that prophesying would be more regulated. Until the time of the evening sacrifice, but there was no response. No one answered. In fact, no one paid attention. This is where we are. All right, let's read 30 through 35. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come here to me." They came to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, "Your name shall be Israel." With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. He dug a trench around it large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. He said to them, "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood." "Do it again," he said, and they did it again. "Do it a 3rd time," he ordered, and they did it the 3rd time. The water ran down the altar and even filled the trench. Okay, just pause there. Elijah calls the people, because remember, it's not about winning the contest, it's about winning the hearts of the people. So he wants the people to come back. Come here and let's see. And then he begins to rebuild their heritage. This is a funny symbolism. And we might read back over it. But he begins in their sight to rebuild their heritage. Okay, did you see that? What does it say? Did he build a brand new altar? What did he do? He rebuilt an altar that was there on Mount Horeb, right? And so in the sight of all the people, he began to restructure what had been a previous symbol of their life in Yahweh. And so he's almost inviting them home. Come with me. Let's sit and worship. Let's go to church the way we used to. Watch this. And he took 12 stones, which would have been a part of the altar already. What do the 12 stones represent? The 12 tribes. He's rebuilding their heritage. This is who we are. This is how we make up. This is how we worship. Even the water. How many times did we do water? Right. And each time we did 4 jars for a total of how many jars? For a total of 12 jars. Most commentators would say that is a symbol of, even though the 12 tribes, 1 jar for each tribe, might have tried to quench Yahweh's fire, they will not. 1 bucket of water for every one of the tribes. 1 bucket of water for every one of the times that they did not keep up the fire of Yahweh. We're going to soak the wood and soak the wood and soak the wood. And there's a few things why it eliminates the chance of being a trick. It continues the theme of Yahweh having insurmountable odds. And when Yahweh does this, you will know without a doubt who did it and how. So there are 2 pictures here going on. I'm rebuilding your heritage. I'm showing the way you have tried to quench Yahweh's fire. And then I'm going to make it clear who did this. Now we need to read 36 through 39. Did I put that on there? I'm afraid I messed it up somehow. I just have a irrational fear. Okay, that's Josh's fault. Just look down in your Bibles. Here we go. At the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord. Answer me so that these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. And when all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, the Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God. And that's where I want to stop, because we're going to need to save some of that for next week. Okay, let's get into this. Look at this, verse 36. You saw that strange phrase there, at the time of sacrifice. That doesn't mean just this sacrifice. That means this whole cosmic situation has brought us to the time for the Levitical sacrifice. If the temple was in operation, it would be time for sacrifices right now. It's just supposed to be a holy coincidence. One of those God-appointed things. And so when it's the normal time for Yahweh sacrifices in the temple, Elijah begins to pray. Now take your eyes and look at 36 and 37. Analyze that prayer. How would you describe that prayer?
Calling on one specific, not person, but deity.
Mm-hmm. He's calling on one specific God. Good observation. What else?
He makes it real clear that God is not sending fire because Elijah asked him to.
And it also doesn't say Jacob, which we're used to hearing Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's drawing the connection between this country got its name from this God. This is it, right? What else do we recognize? He's not begging.
He's confident, and he's doing, it reminds me of some of the ways that Jesus prayed, as in like,
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like, I know who you are. I need them to know who you are. Lord, show them who you are.
Yeah.
And his confidence.
He's following God's command.
That he is following God's command. Very good. It also is, to me, it is the perfectly different rebuttal than the prophets of Baal's prayers, right? How are their prayers illustrated to us? What? Fanatic, loud. We assume repetitive. If I prayed all day, I would repeat some lines. You know what I mean? And it gives us as much. They're quoted as saying, Baal, answer us. Baal, answer us, right? And so this repetitive, loud, escalating, as if their emotions are going to affect Baal. I've got to gin up myself so that Baal will be affected. Elijah's prayer is the opposite of that. He speaks so clearly and so measuredly. This is your thing. If you want to do it, God, we're right here. And he does it once. That's also very true. Very true. Answer me. Yeah, he does. He brings back the answer word. There's no one answers until Yahweh answers in this passage. And then he gives a reason. And this goes back to, I keep pointing out, this is not about winning a contest. What is this about at the end of this verse? Turning hearts. Answer me. He doesn't say, answer me so that we can defeat that Baal chump once and for all. You know? No. We don't need God. Let me tell you, Yahweh has no need to defeat Baal. You know? I mean, any more than, the Dallas Cowboys feel a need to come defeat the Grand Falls Cowboys. Or what are they called? Rangers? Cowboys? Oh, okay, good. So I got that right. Any more than the Dallas Cowboys have a felt need to come defeat the Grand Falls Cowboys, Yahweh has no felt need to defeat Baal. The purpose is not the win. The purpose is the hearts, right? And Elijah's prayer illustrates that. Answer me, Lord. Answer me so that these people will know that you, Yahweh, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back, right? I love that Yahweh is involved in the heart turning, because it would be tempting to say, you people fix your hearts. God is taking an active role in the heart fixing here. It's really pretty, really pretty. Anything else you want to notice about that?
That's where it's like totally opposite of the prophets of Baal too, that they were doing everything they could to seek what they thought was God, but God was doing all this to seek the people.
Yeah.
So it's also backwards from what they were trying to do.
Very good, Davey. If you didn't hear that, he was saying the Baal prophets were doing everything they could to seek the God. But in our case, God was doing the seeking of the people. A+. Elijah wanted to see Yahweh's glory, not to win the contest for winning's sake or power's sake. Yahweh has no need to prove himself, but to turn back people's hearts to him. And the fire comes from heaven. It laps up everything, the wood, the stones, the soil, even the water, just some scorched spot on the ground after this. And the people's response in 39, very simple. And I got to be honest, I think if I saw this, my response would be very simple too, right? This is almost the franticness, but it's not a negative fanaticness, just overwhelmedness. They get overwhelmed. They repeat themselves. They say, Yahweh, He is the Elohim. Yahweh, He is the Elohim. Now the people are repeating themselves, and they've fallen on the ground, and they are crying this. Okay? Beautiful moment. When we pick up next week, Elijah is going to start giving commands. They're going to It's going to be quite a dramatic scene, and we'll go through that. He's going to tell the people to seize the prophets and kill the prophets, and then he's going to tell Ahab, you better go home and get something to eat, because I hear rain coming. It's really a Clint Eastwood kind of line. Go eat and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rain. And so it's kind of a funny deal, but that's what we're going to look at next week. So, any other thoughts, questions, or rebuttals?
When was evening sacrifice?
I don't know off the top of my head. Sorry. It didn't come up in my studies. I think at some point in my notes I had what verse it came from, but no, like where in Leviticus it comes from. You might have a footnote for that, but I don't right now.
Exodus 29:38-41 and Numbers 28:3-8.
So yeah, there you go.
I will look it up.
That's fine. Other thoughts, questions, rebuttals?
That's when you get this, was at evening sacrifice.
It all,
Back to their history.
yeah, that's right. That's another historical reference. Rebuilding their heritage.
I was gonna ask you if this was true, and then there's a note in my Bible about it, but, so the prophets of Baal, like the one power that they really thought he had was power over the weather.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so the contest was, that's why they thought they said, yeah, this sounds good, because they, if anything, like they really thought that he could at least control some lightning or something.
Yeah.
But,
Exactly. This contest was, Baal is a fertility god, and by doing that, he's lightning and thunder. They're some of the only drawings we have of Baal are Baal on a cloud. Like, that's how associated he is with weather. So for the prophets of Baal, they thought this was on their home field. They really did. They assumed this was right up Baal's alley.
They were depending on worldly knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Elijah wasn't.
Mm-mm.
He was depending on God for a miracle.
Yeah, he was. Good perspective.
I like that God got it all. With stone,
Oh, yeah.
water,
I know. Even the soil, yeah. I kind of would like a better explanation, but that's complete. Especially if it was an ancient altar. I wanted to know where did this altar come in? Who built the altar? And I never found it when I was researching. But he got the whole altar that Moses might have built. I don't know. Maybe. He did. Abraham built a lot of. Huh?
There wasn't any doubt about how hot the fire was.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't that be something? All right, then. Let me pray us out of here. Father, help us to hear your words in our spirit from your Holy Spirit and be guided by you the way Elijah was guided by you. When you call us to walk in your truth, may we have the courage to trust you. Lord, may you do something in our life and in our days and in our church. Do something that is clear, that turns the people's heart back to you. And Lord, help us to trust you when we feel like we're the only one, like Elijah does. Again, we lift up David's family and all the hurting families. May you be near the brokenhearted. And we ask all these things in the name of Jesus and in the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right. Y'all have a good night.
twilight.
Was it twilight? Thank you.
funny, it's funny. You can't help it. And I did enjoy seeing you have a big laugh like that.
I don't know why it tickled me so much.
Well, some things hit you and you can't
Yeah,
get away from it.
I know. That's funny, yeah. Yeah, I need
It's usually something that happens to me that I'm laughing at.
I know what you mean. I think, yeah, I laugh at myself a lot easier than I laugh at other people. But that time it just tickled me.
Well, part of that, you laughing at yourself because you finally figured out what it was.
Yeah,
you should have known to start with.
The smell was so familiar, and it
Yeah.
it was a puzzle that needed solving.
What, the smell?
We had a funny experience one Wednesday night because we were all sitting here thinking something was burning, but it didn't quite smell burn. But what it was we had on one heater and one air conditioner. It was that first time you turn on
Yeah.
the heater smell,
Burning all over the.
and it tickled me after that. We figured it out. I laughed a lot.
You would have enjoyed it. He couldn't stop laughing.
It's a funny deal. I guess I just need to.
But it was painfully evident that Gary did it. Because he'd come up here early and turned the air conditioners on, but he turned one heater on.
One heater on.
And it's so easy to do because you just press that button
Right.
till it gets to where you want it.
Uh-huh.
And you can't get to where you can see it because it's behind the organ.
Right.
And it's really hard to get to. And he didn't
Pressed
stop
it
at the
too many
right
times.
time and left the
Yeah.
heater on instead of the.
Not very. Hey, send me Chef